Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Jim Powell Report. This is our holiday special. I'm Jim Powell, your host, and we have a very, very special guest on our show today. Rosalie Powell is our remarkable rug hooking artist that we have right here in Martha's Vineyard. And Rosalie, you have a great show that's up at the West Tisbury Library, December 5th through the 30th.
Yes.
And we're so glad to have you in our studio for a little bit of time today. And you've been preparing with lots of people to put this show together. And tell us a little bit about the show that's up in West Tisbury.
It is really my life's work in that I've been hooking all my life since I was 8 years old. My mother taught me. Now, I didn't do much with it for a lot of years. But it's good to start the children when they're young like that. Mm-hmm. Like my great-granddaughter, Natalie. Mm-hmm. I have been taught her. Mm-hmm. And I also have tried to carry on the tradition for this type of rug hooking, which was an early American, they used them to be very practical on the floors. Mm-hmm. And designs are taken from everywhere, but we sort of have modernized a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. And this exhibit that's up at the West Tisbury Library shows a lot of the different styles from the primitives, the orientals, the scenic panoramic views, the courier knives, shows flowers, scrolls, fantasy flowers. Mm-hmm. And there are just 30 of your rugs. You have a huge collection, though, of ones that you've done all by hand. And I know the number one question you get asked is, how much can I buy one? And what do you say?
I say I do not sell my rugs. I may give them as gifts to my family and friends. But what I do sell is inspiration. Mm-hmm.
And so you teach classes at the Bayberry Inn in West Tisbury every Wednesday, is that right?
Yes, my studio there.
Mm-hmm. And you're starting up a new class in January?
Yes, January 5th. We're starting a beginner's class, and you need to call me to make sure we have the time coordinated.
And I know it's in demand. Your number is 508-693-1984.
That's right.
Those people might want to write it down, 693-1984, if you want to get a spot in your class. And I know that with the rug hooking, it's a magnificent art, but you always have to start out with some inspiration, with some ideas.
Yes. Sometimes you take those from nature. Other times you'll take an old antique design, like the pillow that I have here. Mm-hmm. This was taken from an antique bed rug. They used to make rugs to put not on the floor. They did do that too, but also for a cover on your bed. And they would have just kind of primitive floral designs or animals or whatever pleases them.
Mm-hmm. And so when you see a rug like this that's already made, it started with your inspiration, with your idea. Maybe you had a purpose, but you had to start thinking about the colors you wanted to use and what materials. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about how you plan and prepare?
Well, sometimes I don't always sleep very well because I am busy planning my rugs. And color is so important to how you do your rugs, where you place the color, how one color works against the other, whether you're doing something that's realistic or just an abstract rug that can be fantasy, and it doesn't have to look like a real flower. So there's just all kinds of rugs that you can do. They're not just one little rug, like a shag rug like they used to make years ago. There's a simple procedure where you pull up one loop, one strand at a time of cut wool. Now, I must admit, I don't have to cut this by hand anymore. I do have a cutter that you crank out a number of strips at one time. And this happens to be called a fine cut. That means that these strands are about, I don't know, an eighth of an inch maybe?
An eighth of an inch, But it starts out with these, what do you call these?
This is called a swatch.
A swatch, and has...
What it really starts with is the color and dyeing the wool. And we do that. And I teach
You teach your
people
students how to,
yes,
mix the dyes
how to
and
mix
color.
the dyes and how to get, well, these are called shades, and you have or we call them values, and usually about 5 or 6 values for a swatch is what will give you this optical illusion. This is a monochromatic.
It's monochromatic. It's
I mean,
very
it's just-
neutral.
it's
all
look at
grays.
this. Yeah.
But look at it when you put it
shades.
together.
Different
those
shades.
shades create an image of a scroll. Now, what happens if you're using colors?
When you're using colors, you really should have a color wheel and know what colors work with others. And the most common one that I start new beginners with is called a complementary. And that means that you look at the color wheel and you see what color is opposite on the wheel. And those two colors will always be compatible. I know I had a beginning student one time who was working on rather an abstract motif and wanted to know what color to use on it. And I said, well, when in doubt, always pick the color that's next to it on the color wheel. And that works, doesn't it, Jim?
That's right.
Yeah.
You've taught me.
I taught Jim. I have taught a number
Donna.
of family members. I have taught my
Shannon.
niece, Donna, my granddaughter, Shannon, my oldest great-granddaughter, Natalie, another cousin, a niece, 2 nieces actually, have all attended my hooking classes. And you don't start with something like an Oriental, but you start with something like a primitive. And a
Like
primitive,
these chickens here.
yeah, I mean, they're
And other
just fun.
primitives that you have on display
Oh,
up
yeah.
at the library.
I do. I have a number up there. And then showing progression of as your skills get better, you can do rugs that have more detail in them, and you need to work harder to make your colors work right. But it's a great another reason that I tell people that what that happens with hooking is it's a tension reliever. It's some people use knitting, anything to keep your hands in a rhythmic pattern, and you sit and relax. You're not thinking about the cares of the world or a family problem. What you're doing is just immersing yourself in color and design and letting your creativity work. And for me, that happens late at night. I stay up late.
Well, that's when there are less interruptions, too.
Yes.
The phones don't ring, and
Yes.
for many people, the kids aren't around or whatever.
And of course, on the days that I'm teaching, I'm involved totally with the class and what they're working on and how I can help them.
Answering questions.
Answering
Seems like you
questions.
spend a lot of your life answering questions.
I really have.
Your whole career.
I've had several different careers or jobs, but I've always, when I worked right out of college, I worked for McGraw-Hill.
In New York City,
And I answered
McGraw-Hill.
questions. I've worked at the museum library answering questions.
Over in Edgartown.
In Edgartown.
Genealogy questions.
Genealogy. I spent 20 years of my life at the Extension Service, the county home economist, and answering questions. I answer questions all the time about my rugs.
And people want to know, they call in and ask if you can help them repair rugs.
Oh, yes, but I don't. I help them find the person who does, but I myself do not.
That's a tough job.
Yeah. But I will tell you that in answering questions, there is the most frequently asked question of me is, how long does it take you to do it?
Yeah, how long did it take you to do that Oriental out there?
Well, do you keep track of the time when you're having fun?
No.
I do not either. I just get immersed in my rug hooking, and I don't think about time. Now, if I hooked for a business and I had to keep track of the time for somebody else, that's not fun at all. I tried it once, and there are just too many interruptions, and you have to keep track of every minute you're working or not working. And that's not what I want to do. To me, it's pure recreation. And I'm trying to share that with other people because rug hooking, old-fashioned rug hooking, is a dying art now. Although we have had a revival, we have people from all over who are now studying. And I attend seminars, sometimes as a teacher, but most times I'm also there as a student, because you can always keep learning.
And this exhibit that's up at the West Tisbury Library demonstrates about 30 of your rugs over your years of practice making perfect. And they are extraordinary. I can't believe the comments. I can believe the comments that are on the piano book, but that people are really amazed at how beautiful they are. And that you explain in your biography that rug hooking began in the early 19th century here in New England, just to cover these cold wooden floors we have in our old homes. But that your mother, my grandmother, Bernice Mayhew Humphreys, had challenged you to create a hooked chair seat to enter in the 4-H exhibit up at the fair. Is that right?
Yes, that is.
And then also parallel around that time, in the 1940s, a woman by the name of Pearl McGowan began her teaching program.
Yes. And she wanted excellence in work and wanted people to be able to hook all styles of hooking, not just get stuck on a wide cut, which is what we call a primitive. And many people enjoy to look at them, and it's fun to hook them. But you use a wider cut and a bigger hook, like the hooks for a primitive is really has quite a big shank on it, whereas the hook that I use for fine cut is just a tiny little, like a crochet hook, but it is it has a big handle, you know, that will fit in the palm of your hand, and you can, mine is really getting all shiny from use from the years.
In just a little bit, I want to have you demonstrate just a little bit what it looks like when you're hooking.
And I'll just show you the other piece of equipment that is really important, and that is that you have a pair of special scissors that have a curved handle that curves in that direction.
That's unique.
And it also has very sharp points in both points, and they are sharp all the way to the end, because you need to be able to slip your scissors in and cut close to the edge. So you need especially good scissors.
Very sharp.
Yeah, very sharp.
Well, I know you've demonstrated this up at the Ag Fair many times.
Many places.
And every year there's a rug school up in New Hampshire. And,
there's rug schools all over the country. Every year in the summertime, I go for a week to Nichols College out in Dudley, where the New England rug hookers meet, the teachers. It's a teacher's workshop. And we each take special programs and some new technique or a new style. Lately, it's been the style we all had to learn how to do sort of a doodling and then make a rug from that. But I like realism, and my rugs are mostly realistic. A rose, for instance, has individual petals, and you have to learn how to shade the petals so that you get maybe 6 or 8 shades of one color in one petal.
And your exhibit up at the library shows a rose petal turning, and like sunshine is coming through it. And you can feel how supple it is, just by visually.
It really looks real. And you have to learn how flowers look. I have a sampler up there also, which has 12 different flowers. When you want to, I use all my rugs too in my classes as examples. And when you want to do a certain flower, you have to know what color the stamens are. So it's very helpful to have a flower book of some sort. I use all kinds of visuals, and that's what I need rugs for, including we were learning how to do lilies one time, a class I was doing on flowers. And we had a lily that sat with us through over a week of learning how to get that, it's called a throat flower, how to give it depth so that you could look down into the throat of a lily. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing an animal, now I'm not real good with a lot of animals, but I have a wonderful book. And so if you want to know what the fur looks like on a certain kind of animal, or the difference with the eyes, that will help you decide so much about what the animal looks like, whether they're slanted one way or slanted the other.
I remember seeing a book there at the studio on apples.
Oh, yes.
How many types of apples are there?
Dozens and dozens. And this year was a good apple year for most people on the island. We know about all the different kinds. But you want to look at it close up so you can get, on some apples they're sort of like freckles, and you need to know how to put those in.
During the opening ceremony, promoting the exhibit at the library, you spent a little time showing people how to hook.
Yes.
And here in the studio, it's a little different than the way you usually set up with your bigger frame. I was wondering if you might just take a minute and just show us a little bit about what it's like with your loop and your hooks, and what it's like to pull a loop.
Pull a loop, that's the expression that we use. We rug hookers use pull a loop.
We want to stand up and show us a little bit?
I can do
Just
it a
tell us
little
about
bit by standing.
It's hard. I know you're doing it from behind.
And I'm actually
it's like tying someone's shoes.
I'm not actually going to follow the pattern here. I'm just going to use a place where I see it.
So this isn't like when you take yarn and do what's that potlatch or whatever. That has nothing to do with that.
No, it doesn't.
This is totally different.
This is a simple procedure where you use your hook to spread open threads. You do need to have a backing that has even weave. Like we used to use burlap. Burlap sometimes has slubs in it. We use linen a lot, especially the linen that comes from Ireland, and that's very even. Or we use a cotton backing now that is good because it doesn't rot. Now burlap rots after a while.
Oh, and that's why so many people need to have them repaired.
Yes, they come to me. But the other reason they need them repaired is their dogs chewed a hole in them, or the cat pulled it all out. So this is actually a cotton foundation, and I'm using all wool. It has to be wool that is not, for instance, the wool I use here has not been over dyed with a resin to keep it from wrinkling. It's very plain. And then when you dye that wool, it soaks into the fabric better. So this is this kind of a swatch. I use all these different foundations. These are the strips that could be cut different widths. I'm just going to pull a couple through to show you that you hold the strand of wool in your opposite hand from the hook. I happen to be right-handed, so that's the way it goes. And you make a little, you push the hook in there to make a little space.
Pushes the weave, the cotton weave apart.
And using your hand that's underneath, I don't want to say right or left because you can do it with either one. And you pull it to the surface. I usually leave a little tail before I go on to the next one. Now usually you don't go in every single hole. You don't need that, but you want to make sure they're close enough together so they touch the next one with their strips.
Oh, so when wool fibers touch, I know under the microscope they have lots of hooks.
Yes.
That it's jagged, and that's why they're itchy. And so those hooks wind up grabbing hold of each other, and that helps keep them in place.
And you want to try to get them all the same height and enough distance between them so that you have a little flexibility. If you press on them like a chair seat that you're sitting on, or a rug where you walk on it. It wants to be not so tight that the backing will crack. You can't force it. You want them just close enough together so they touch. And it's very simple. You saw me do a couple of loops in a second here.
You make it look so simple and easy.
And if you do make a mistake, the nice thing about hooking is that you can just pull it right out.
Like you just
and you
did.
start over again. You'd never know it had been there. Whereas needlepoint is so hard to pick back if you make a mistake. Or with knitting, if you make a mistake and you have to redo it.
And then you have
I
loops
have trouble
after
with
loops,
that.
all these loops left.
Yeah, I have
Curly
trouble
loops.
with that. But again, I think I like to think about the reason why people enjoy this so much is not just that you are making something beautiful and useful, such as a pillow or a rug or a chair seat or a doorstop. You can make many different items with a hooked backing. A footstool is great to do this type of backing instead of needlepoint, which is not, it's much finer.
Well, I know you also have things like the Oyster Bay.
Oh, those are
Tiffany window. I know
Yeah.
the original is at the Met in New York.
Yeah.
But so you can actually make something that would hang, like a picture of a sailboat.
Yes.
You know, a whale ship or something.
And
or Korean knives.
The courier knives are wonderful for pictorials, getting landscapes, for the tones of a sky. I have a lot of winter skies in mine, you know, ice and snow. Some of them more difficult to do than others to make it look real, because pictorial like that, you're adapting a courier knives design. Or when you're adapting something that is a real thing, like the Tiffany window that's made of stained glass, you make a hooked one that looks like it, but you try to get the same color tones in it that the original was. And I do have a sample in glass that came from the museum that you can hang. I hang it in my window so the light comes through.
The natural light at your
Yeah,
studio.
so that you can then duplicate that best you can. But you know, people are like all kinds of things, and you wouldn't enjoy doing that as much as you would enjoy the chickens that are underneath that.
Yeah. I know I've had chickens and sheep from down at the farm in Lambert's Cove.
Yes, and people love to see the animals. Now, I can't get over this. I frequently, during this exhibit, I've asked people what their favorite rug is, and do you know what they tell me? There's a rug up there that says it's Jim's sheep. Now, this is the Jim who had the sheep, but I used the fleece from his sheep. There are 5 of them there, and they're all different colors. And I used fleece and yarn that had been spun from his sheep to do the rug.
So there's an authenticity to
Yeah,
it that adds
and-
realism.
And so frequently I do a rug that is especially made for some purpose. I did a rug for my sister's 50th wedding anniversary, and I do rugs for birthdays.
Let's have you just have a seat there for a little bit, and with these different rugs, the ones that you have samples of up at the library, that people can go in and see this exhibit, the West Tisbury Library. There's some wonderful brochures that give information a little bit about the history of the Bayberry Rug School, and how people can call you at 693-1984 and get information, or come by and just take a look and see if they might be interested. Because you teach in the mornings, is that right?
I teach in the afternoon and in the evening. I have an evening class now primarily for people who are working during the day, or who have small children and who can get away from them for a while in the evening. And there's a lot to the gathering in a group, social reason for being together, and I do have a few young mothers who are very relieved. They can relax in a group. They do talk about all kinds of things. I try to keep them steered away. I said, in this class, you don't talk about politics or religion. And you can talk about most anything else.
Just focus on
Just
artistry.
focus on, yes, and being there and enjoying what you're doing.
That's fabulous. Well, Mom, it's wonderful that you are doing this, and so people can call in. They can come by the library through December 30th, or they can come by the Bayberry Inn on Old Courthouse Road in West Tisbury. And
I want to talk about that.
now you are 3 times national champion, I understand, and there's a fabulous rug that you did. It's orange and blue, and it's on the brochure. We'll show a shot of it as well. But tell us about that rug.
Well, what I enjoy doing with this rug is I also have a small collection of paisley shawls, antique paisley shawls. And most antique paisley get holes in the middle. Or they've been worn and all, but the pattern still intrigues me. And I made this rug that is now a hooked rug, but I made
It's about,
parts
what,
of
4 or
it.
5 feet long?
Yes. I made parts of it with pieces from an antique paisley. But more than that, I took the color harmony, the plan of one of the paisleys, and introduced these colors that are in the shawl. And so I'm reproducing using some of the paisley designs that were so typical. And I dyed the blue. I tried to get as close as I could to that blue, but it was hard.
Amazing.
But this gold and yellow and orange really kind of together look gold. And
Complementary.
that is from the actual shawl. So, it was fun to do because it was such a challenge.
I know it's exhibited right when you walk in the room.
You see
to
it
the left.
hanging
It's
all to the-
spotlit.
yeah.
And that you have many rugs, many different sizes and shapes. And every year at the Martha's Vineyard Agricultural Society Fair, the annual fair, that you're a judge.
Yes, I don't exhibit anymore because I'd be competing with my students, and that's not fun.
And that many of your students win the first prize, win the blue ribbon.
Well, they're well taught. And they don't win a blue ribbon if they do make a mistake, if they don't finish the rug properly, for instance. And there are a lot of things you look for. But
and I know that you're credentialed through the McGowan.
yes, I have a national accreditation to be able to teach by the method. And most people wouldn't know, except a rug hooker, just what that amounts to. But it's an important thing. And this rug, I entered in an international competition, actually. And I think there were about 600 rugs that were judged, and I was able to be chosen. And there is a book each year called Celebrations that Rug Hooking Magazine puts out. And that one's important to me, to be in that book.
Wonderful. Well, Rosalie, it's wonderful to have you here on our show today. That with our special Christmas show, we want to do something that was cheery and bright and colorful to help bring holiday cheer to everyone. And it's a wonderful honor to have you here on my show and to have you teaching me rug hooking, traditional rug hooking. And so we hope people will get up to the West Tisbury Library or come by the Bayberry Rug School on Old Courthouse Road and get to talk with you.
Great.
And we want to thank you for tuning in to this special episode of the Jim Powell Report. I'm your host, Jim Powell. Glad to have you here, and happy holidays. Thank you for all that you do, and hope you'll pull a loop and get into rug hooking real soon. Thank you.